What's up everybody, how's it going? It's Burke aka Dansg08 here, and this is a video that I've made especially for the people I think that probably follow the channel a bit more closely. So it's an unlisted one. If you're watching this, it's because you're either a friend of mine or you've seen it through Twitter or you've seen it through Instagram. This one is just for you guys because this is a video I've been kind of deliberating about whether I should make or not for quite some time, because I feel like the potential for it to be misunderstood is pretty high. But I feel like people that know me and that know the channel and that know what I'm about would understand what I'm trying to achieve with this and the reason why it exists. And so I'm hoping that for you guys watching it, by the end of it, you'd have learned something new and it will be an interesting video for you as well. So what is the point of this video? The primary point of this video is to give you guys information about how some of the more monetary aspects of YouTube work behind the scenes, because I think that this is something that people don't really understand so well, and that's of course understandable. YouTube is a very, well, online content creation is a very new platform. People are of course going to be a bit more confused about how we make money, how it all works, how do the views work, how much do we get paid per view, and all of these kinds of things. Because I know it from my real life, people ask me all the time whenever I tell them that I'm a YouTuber. After a little bit of conversation, they always want to know, well, how much money do you make, how do you make money, all this kind of stuff. I'm going to give you guys some information about this stuff. And I think the main reason why this is interesting is because once you understand how this works and the ways in which views translate to revenue for content creators, it might change how you view things potentially. Because of course YouTube is a dream job for so many people, and for me included. It's like a miracle that I get to do this for a living, and I'm incredibly blessed and incredibly grateful for the opportunity. But of course when it comes to YouTube, there's always this sort of narrative of, oh, you know, YouTubers that do it full time, they're making a ton of money, it's easy money, it's all of these kind of things. And to some extent that's of course true, and there are YouTubers that are making a huge amount of money, and compared to some other types of jobs, of course it is easier to make money on YouTube and a lot more fun in almost all instances. But I think the way in which we make money and the way in which it all works is something that a lot of people are unfamiliar with. And when I break this stuff down and explain it to people, a lot of people are often surprised by how it works. So I think for you guys as supporters of my channel, and as supporters of other content creators especially, I think knowing this information might be helpful to you guys in understanding how your support and how your viewership affects people that do this full time and need to generate revenue from their content to continue doing this full time and to make a living and to pay their bills and keep a roof over their head and look after their family and kids if they have them, and all of that kind of stuff. So that's what this video is going to be about. I'm going to be showing you guys real numbers from my channel. It's not going to be a hugely deep dive about, oh, this is how much money I make per month and this, that, the other, but I'm going to be showing you guys examples of how views translate into revenue and how that breaks down and how different sources of income can help channels in different ways. So that's something I'm hoping that you guys will be able to gain from this, and it will hopefully give you some better perspective on our side as content creators, how we make our money, and how you guys do and can continue to influence these things in a meaningful way. So before I get into the numbers, important things to note here. I am of course only going to be showing things from my own channel. My channel is never going to be exactly the same as any other channel because there's just too many things that influence these kind of numbers and where they come from and what they result in. But it's my belief, through all of my experience on the platform since 2008 and being able to monetize since 2011, I think I've seen a lot of this stuff and I generally have an idea of how it all works. And by my estimation, a lot of channels that are of a similar size to me, you know, a few 100,000 subscribers at the most, and also that get the same amount of views that I do, roughly speaking. So that could be anywhere from 500,000 to 1.5, 2 million views a month. Channels in that kind of range, I think we have similar sorts of experiences. So of course it's not going to be a one-to-one. Don't assume that my numbers are going to apply to any other content creator you follow, but I think it should give you a ballpark idea of how it works. And of course remember, if there's channels that have like partnerships and sponsorships and they have little inserts in their videos like this video is sponsored by blah blah blah, that completely changes all of the mechanics of this kind of stuff. For channels that make the same types of content that I create, so not made for kids content, and content that's pretty much entirely in English, I think there should be a decent ballpark and a barometer for how this all works, and roughly speaking how much money these guys make from their content. But again, very important, do not use my figures and my numbers as some kind of be-all end-all. or like some very accurate way to project how certain YouTubers make money. This is just one aspect of it, and it's something that I want to share with you. It primarily applies to my channel, but it should give you some insight into how it works for other content creators as well. The TLDR of what I'm going to show you in this video is the fact that views count for much less than you might imagine in terms of how beneficial they are, purely on a monetary level. So what I don't want people to do is to kind of draw a conclusion from here and say the reason he's making this video is because he thinks that views are worthless, he doesn't care about people's views, all of that kind of stuff. I think, again, you guys know me well enough that that's definitely not the point of this video. Of course, without the views, without the support, without the kind words that we get from you guys, we wouldn't be able to do what we do, and we wouldn't get to where we are today, and we wouldn't get to enjoy what we're doing. So if you're the kind of person that's only ever shown your support for a channel by actually watching their content, that is still the single most important and best thing that you can do for a channel, because it's not just about the money. We do this because we love to do it, and because we get to share our experience with so many people around the world and get to experience their love and support. So that's something that underlines this entire video. This isn't a if you only view videos and do nothing more, then you're not important to the channel or whatever. This is purely designed to give you information about this stuff and give you guys some more perspective on how it works, because I am sure that a lot of people are going to be surprised by some of the numbers that they see here in this video. So let's get into it, and I'll show you guys some examples from my channel to give you an idea of the kind of numbers that we're talking about. Okay, so the first video I'm going to show you is going to be, like, I guess the worst case scenario in terms of views versus revenue. Now, of the recent videos I made, this is one of the worst ones that I've seen so far, and this video is Horizon Forbidden West Part 42. As you can see, I've got 614 views for this video, and I've made an estimated ad revenue of $1.23. Underneath it you can see YouTube Premium revenue. That's something I'm going to go into later, but the estimated ad revenue is the one where literally your viewership sitting in front of a screen and seeing that ad that is displayed on there, that is the way in which we generate money from the views. That's the primary way in which YouTube pays us. So that is why 123 is the main number that you need to look out for here. So this is one of the worst ones that I found, and we're going to see some better ones too, so don't take this as like the final kind of figure. But let's do a little bit of maths here just to see what this results in. So from 614 we've made $1.23. So if we divide $1.23 by 614 views, that gives us $0.002 per view. So that literally means 1/5 of a cent per view. This is the number that I think a lot of people are going to be potentially surprised by. One individual view has gained me 1/5 of a cent in this video. So when I talk about these LPs that are not Final Fantasy that I know aren't going to get that many views, so I'm talking like, you know, 500 views an episode, 700 views an episode, I'm making these effectively at a loss. So if you think it takes me half an hour to record the episode, let's just say half an hour to edit the episode, 20 minutes to render the episode, well, at least on my PC in the UK, it takes me about an hour and a half to upload this episode, and then I have to make the thumbnail, put all the metadata, everything, all that kind of stuff. I end up making a total, even including YouTube Premium revenue, which we'll talk about later, I make $1.50 out of that one particular video. So yeah, for videos like this, that's why I always say that these do not really make money for the channel. There aren't very many jobs for people that live in the West that make you $1.52. Well, I've spent more than it takes me maybe 2 hours total, everything all in, to make this video. So let's just say I make somewhere between 75 cents to $1 for an hour's worth of quote-unquote labor to make this video. Now, of course, if that were the case for everything I did, I wouldn't be able to run a channel, so that's why I'm showing you guys the worst case, where something not only has low ad revenue, but it also has a low view count as well. So for that reason, this is about as bad as it gets. 1/5 of a cent per video. So that's the absolute worst, and that's why for these kind of LPs, they are the ones that are basically made almost entirely for my own enjoyment, and because I want to play these games, share them with you guys and have them on the channel. Not really because they are the most financially smart decision for me as someone, well, who is running a business. You know, having a YouTube channel and being a full-time content creator is basically being self-employed and running a self-employed business. It doesn't make business sense, but I do it because that's what I love to do and that's what I want to share. So that is the worst case. Let's have a look at something else. This next one is an Elden Ring episode, and this one has done a bit better, so this should give you a little better perspective. So this is something that's a bit more average for me. Elden Ring, this episode has about 1,000 views, and it's gained, again, just from the ad revenue, ignoring premium revenue for now, it's gained $6.51. So let's do some maths again. So bear in mind that the first one was $0.002 per view. That gives us 0.0066. So this video has made almost 3.5 times as much as the Horizon Forbidden West video. And this is what I mean in terms of there is a lot of variability. So it could be the case that this video had better ads on it, higher paying ads on it. You have to take an average as you go along, because if you just kind of pinpoint different data points, you're going to get wildly varying results. But when you take a more sort of decent average of different options, then you start to find what your average kind of earnings are from a normal LP video. So for this one, again, less than a cent per view, and this is definitely much more average for the channel. Now finally, I'm going to show you guys a Final Fantasy video. Now this is a Final Fantasy LP video. These are the most viewed LP videos on the channel. So in terms of day-to-day LP content, this is pretty much as good as it gets for my channel. So this is a way for you to see kind of the upper end for a video that actually does get some views as well, and it should have a decent amount of ad revenue too. So let's have a look at the best scenario for LP content. So I've picked Final Fantasy V walkthrough part 84, so I've picked one that has a fairly chunky number of views just to give you guys a good example here. This is the final part where I show X-Death and like the finale of the game. 3,700 views, which is a pretty healthy number for the channel, like in relative terms for LP content, that's a good number. And the estimated ad revenue from this is $25 roughly, $24.67. So let's do some maths again and see the per view revenue for Final Fantasy V here. So once again, basically 0.0066 per view. This one, again, if I'm purely looking at it from a business standpoint, this is why what YouTube is telling me and what my channel is telling me is basically just do Final Fantasy content all the time. Now imagine if all of the hours that I put in to do Forbidden West and Elden Ring, I completely ignored that and I only made Final Fantasy content. Because the views would be higher, not necessarily because I'd gain more revenue per view, but because I would get more views, I would make more money as a content creator, and that would be smart business for me, because you're seeing the difference, the gulf in views between Final Fantasy and Elden Ring. Now you might say this is a final episode, but honestly, Final Fantasy usually performs at least 2 to 3 times better than even a series like Elden Ring, which is pushing above its weight relative to the rest of the channel. So I make 2 to 3 times more revenue per LP episode when I'm doing Final Fantasy. So when it comes to my day-to-day content and what is the most business sensical thing for me to do on the channel, it would be for me to basically be a pure Final Fantasy channel and upload Final Fantasy, and pretty much only Final Fantasy, because the other content that I like to do, the non-Final Fantasy LP content, relative to what I could be earning, it makes very little money, and in the worst case scenario, I'm working for very, very little when you kind of look at it on the grander scheme. So that is the general idea for LP episodes, and for the meat of my content on YouTube. This is the reality when it comes to views. The only reason I'm able to sustain the channel and to do this thing for a living is not because my LP views are basically funding my entire channel. It's a mix of things. So it's all of the archived old content. So it could be movie versions that are still gaining a lot of views, even though it's been like 5 or 10 years since some of them have been out. It's the stream that's gaining a lot of viewership. It's one-off content I'm making, so it could be like the Final Fantasy X glitch video that I made, which has like 55,000 views in the first month. Those are the kind of things that are driving the content, and when you add up the thousands of LP episodes that I've been working on over the years, when you put all of that stuff together, then I make enough to run the channel. But on an individual basis and on a per view basis, the LP content does not earn me that much money at all. And for non-Final Fantasy stuff that gets like 1,000 views, 500 views, that kind of thing, those ones are very much the bottom of the barrel, and it's almost like hobby level. The money that I would make from that, if that was all I was making on the channel, I definitely wouldn't be able to run things full time, and I'd just be doing this thing as a hobby. So that is the reality, my friends. Anywhere from about 0.002 cents to 0.008 cents, I would say, per view, per video, is the reality of what I earn on my channel. So let's extrapolate this out to a month. Let's say you're the kind of person that you view every single piece of content on the channel, and I upload, let's say on average, 5 videos a week. At the moment it's been more than that for quite some time, but let's take the lower number, let's say 5 a week. That's 20 a month, so 20 to 25 a month. Let's say 25 for argument's sake. You watch 25 Dansg08 videos every month. That gives you $0.16. So that is the amount of revenue the most dedicated viewer on the channel can earn me just purely by watching and enjoying the content. So that's a key number here, $0.16. There is a caveat to the numbers that you're seeing here that I can't really cater for. I can't break it down to that degree, and I don't think it's probably fair to either. But the amount of money that you make per view is also dependent on geographic location. So you don't gain the same amount of revenue from a viewer that's based in country A versus a viewer that's based in country B. But I do get a fair few viewers from all over the world. Even though it is US and UK heavy, I think most content creators that create content that's in English will largely have a viewership that is by and large fairly similar to mine. So what these numbers are is going to be an average of the viewers. So even though the viewer from country A might earn me more than the number I'm quoting here, I'm going to give you guys an average because it's far too complicated to try to cater for every single different nationality and the differences in revenue that can generate and all of these kind of things. So I'm going to treat like the viewer as just an average citizen of Earth that could be from anywhere in the world. So that's just something that's worth clarifying as well, because analytics and YouTube ad revenue is complicated, and that's why I'm saying that you can't apply this kind of one-to-one with any other content creator or even across my own channel. But I'm just hoping that what I do show you guys is going to give you a sufficient idea and allow you to sort of average it out in your mind as to how this all works. $0.16, that's a key number here, because that's something I'm going to use as a comparison point for other sources of revenue on the channel. And I think you guys can already see where I'm going with this, but let's continue the story just so that you can get even more perspective on how this all affects the channel. So for these examples, I am going to take the 16 cents example as basically the most dedicated viewer the channel can have, 16 cents per month from their viewership. Now, what are other revenue sources for a channel? So to explain this better, let me move on to YouTube premium views and show you the Final Fantasy V video that I showed earlier. Now in this screenshot, all you're seeing is the YouTube premium views and how much revenue that's generated for the channel. So I'm not entirely sure why the ad revenue still appears here. I'm guessing that maybe even though you have YouTube premium, there's still some kind of ads that it's able to show you. I'm not entirely sure how that works. So I'm going to ignore the 41 cents here. We're going to look at the bit that specifically says your YouTube premium revenue. And that bit is 12 cents. So we've had 11 people with a YouTube premium membership that has watched this particular video out of 3,700 people. And from those 11 people, 12 cents worth of revenue has been generated. Okay, so the maths on this one wasn't particularly hard, but what we see is that for this particular example, YouTube premium revenue was, for one person viewing, it was about 1 cent per video. So again, let's extrapolate this out to a month, and let's say you watch 25 videos. Again, at 1 cent you have 25 cents. So this means that if you're a YouTube premium viewer and you watch all of the Dansg08 content, then that means that you generate the channel 25 cents instead of the 16 cents that you would if you weren't a premium viewer. So that's already about 50% more revenue per view from your end of the equation. Now, extrapolating this out to my entire channel and my entire monthly earnings, basically YouTube Premium per view earns me about twice as much as a normal regular viewer does. So that's the first thing. YouTube Premium actually earns content creators more money per view than it would if you weren't a YouTube Premium viewer. And the difference is about 50 to 100% depending on obviously what you're watching and all these other external factors that aren't related to you as a viewer. So the easiest way to think about this is that if tomorrow every single viewer of the Dansg08 channel happened to become a YouTube Premium viewer, then basically my monthly income would go up by 50 to 100% basically overnight. That's just how things would work. This one I think is particularly important because obviously YouTube Premium is marketed as something that's good for the viewer, and of course it is, because of course you don't have to deal with ads, you can download offline content, and you can access YouTube Music, so there's all these kinds of perks. But from the creator side, it's also beneficial as well, and this is something I was very curious of when Premium was first a thing, and I had to wait for a while for like the analytics data to build up before I could start comparing and seeing how it influences me as a content creator as well. And so the conclusion that I have for my channel is that YouTube Premium is something that is more beneficial in terms of revenue per view. So as of this point, even for the most dedicated of viewers, I am up to 25 cents a month for the revenue that I gain. So now of course we're going to start to head to things that really take content creators' revenue to the next level, and this is going to probably inform you of a lot of reasons why a lot of content creators, especially in the gaming space, are preferring to stream their LP content and to do their walkthroughs kind of on Twitch and dump their recordings to YouTube afterwards, or maybe not do that at all. You're going to start seeing some real differences here in the amount of revenue that can be made by YouTube channels if they take advantage of sources other than views. So for my case, the first one that's worth talking about is, of course, Patreon. Patreon is a platform where you basically subscribe to it and you gain perks based on the level that you subscribe at. So I'm not going to explain to you all of my like perks and try to sell you the Patreon. I'm just going to give you the numbers and the facts about it. So my tiers start at $1 and they go all the way up to $30 per month. So let's have a look at the bottom tier. So at $1 per month on Patreon, as a viewer of the channel, even if you don't watch every single video, you watch maybe 2 a week or something like that, as a bottom tier $1 patron, you end up making the channel 5 times more revenue than you would if you were not a patron. So that's an example of how a content creator can really boost their income, is by opening a Patreon and by trying to get as many of their followers to support them on Patreon as they can. So I'm not going to go through every tier individually, but I have a $1 tier, I have a $5 tier, which is going to be 25 times more revenue, and then the top tier, which is the $30 tier, that's going to give you 125 times more revenue per person in comparison to even the most dedicated viewer on the channel. Again, you can even start to extrapolate this further. So 125 times is the best case. If this is a viewer that only watches the channel, they only have time to watch 1 or 2 videos a week, but those 1 or 2 videos a week, they really love what they watch and they still want to support you on Patreon anyway. I don't think every single patron of any content creator necessarily is someone that watches every single thing that they make, but they just really do enjoy what they do watch and they have the financial capability to support them. Let's say this is someone that only watches, let's say, 10 videos a month. Now, if we do the maths on watching 10 videos a month, that's going to be roughly 6 cents a month. So if we do 30 divided by 0.06, then we end up with 500x. So depending on what your point of comparison is, a top tier patron can earn me 125 to 500 times more revenue than if they weren't a patron and they were just purely a viewer on the channel. So this is where you start to see how content creators can really take their earnings to the absolute next level. So if you look at these numbers, that's Patreon. What other methods are there for supporting content creators with these sorts of levels? So there's YouTube channel memberships, so those are $5 a month, and so you've seen that's a 25x again compared to the most like dedicated viewers on the channel. YouTube takes a pretty significant cut from this. They take like 30% or 40% or something like that. That's one of the reasons why Patreon is better, if you're wondering, because Patreon takes about 10%. I think they take 10 to 12% of the $5 that you would give someone on Patreon. YouTube takes about, I think, 35% or something along those lines. So even if you take the 35% away, you end up with about $3.25 per month that you are supporting a content creator. $3.25, again, if you compare that to the 16 cents that you got from purely watching the content, that's about a 20x. So becoming a member of someone's channel on YouTube, if it's a $5 tier per month, that gives you about a 20x in terms of the revenue versus purely views. What else do you have? Well, you can of course donate to channels if they have the capability for you to do so. And again, based on the maths I've already shown you, you can see why donations and why live streaming can really take channels to the absolute next level. Okay, so the final one I want to show you for this video is live streaming. Here is an example of some figures for a stream that I did. I picked this one, which is the Final Fantasy X P Birdman mod, episode 51, because it's not related to any anniversaries or anything, because that can always skew donations and stuff, where people are more likely to be generous and celebratory if you're doing like a channel anniversary or something like that. This was just like part 51 of a series. I was doing monster capturing. I was like, why don't I share the tedium with my followers, and we can chat and just have some fun while I do this. And from this video, you can see that I got 7,000 views for the video, which is of course good. It's Final Fantasy X content. But if you look at the breakdown of revenue, you can see that, I mean, I don't have to do too much maths here. I mean, the estimated ad revenue makes up 10% of the overall money that the video made. So transaction revenue is basically donations. That's what transaction revenue means. So if you look at donations versus ad revenue, I made about almost 9 times as much money just from the transactions, aka the donations that I did from the views alone. So that is why, I mean, this stream was like maybe 3 hours long, something like that. 3 hours work, I managed to make $150. So then when you break it down to per hour, you're like, okay, now I'm making money. Like, this was like $50 an hour. I don't have to edit this video afterwards. I don't have to do any of that kind of stuff. I recorded it, and well, I didn't record it, I streamed it, and then it's on YouTube and it's archived. So this is why, for people that make the kind of content that I make, it's so tempting to just basically do much more live streaming, so that you can, as a business, you can earn a lot more money, and then you have to also work less because you don't need to edit episodes, you don't need to do this, that, and the other. So again, I'm not here to discuss like why I don't prefer to live stream like all the time, why I still do it relatively rarely, but I'm just giving you the numbers on why live streaming can be so lucrative for content creators, especially ones like me that already do have a following. I mean, I'll be honest, if you are starting out and you only have like 30 subscribers on Twitch, or like 50 or 100, you're unlikely to make $150 per stream. But if you're the kind of content creator that does have thousands of people, if you do a stream, you're going to get like 150, 200, 250, 300 or more people watching it at any given stream, then these numbers are much more realistic. So maybe on a quote-unquote bad day, you'll only make $50. But again, when you compare that to what you're making from the views alone, the differences are pretty staggering. So this is the final thing I wanted to show you guys, and I'll probably end things with like a tier list of what earns channels the most revenue based on a viewer's actions. So if we look at it from that perspective, the bottom of the ladder is purely viewing the content. One rung above purely viewing the content is to purely view the content but do it through YouTube Premium. One step above that is like the lowest tier Patreon subscription, so that could be like $1 a month. That's the next one up, but already there's a pretty big jump between like that tier and the Patreon tier. And then from there, the next tier up is becoming a YouTube channel member, or becoming like a $5 patron, something like that. The highest tier above that is being a top tier patron. And alongside all of this stuff, of course, is donations. So donations, of course, because they can range anything from like 30 cents up to literally $10,000. People can donate whatever they want to donate. That obviously skews things a lot, but I would say the average donation that you get, in my experience at least, is somewhere between $3 to $10, I would say, would be the average. And so even with that average, that probably still puts it close to the top tier. So that's the kind of information I wanted to give to you guys. I'm hoping that this has been eye-opening and given you guys some perspective. I said it from the start, and you can choose to believe me or not, but if not a single person ends up behaving differently as a result of this video, I genuinely don't mind. But I did want people to have this information and this knowledge about how it works, because it's usually quite behind the scenes. People don't like to share these numbers, and of course it's not really good form or good social etiquette to kind of just ask people how much money they make. And so I think it's good for people to know, because we are so viewer and community driven, because there is such a direct relationship between what our viewers do and how much money we make. I think it's good for viewers to have that information, because I do think that there are going to be some portion of viewers out there that are going to be like, wait a minute, because I watch so much of their content and I like their videos or I comment on their videos, this is going to be more valuable to them than, let's say, becoming a $1 patron. I can only afford to be a $1 patron, but I'm pretty sure that my viewership and my interaction is going to be more financially helpful for this particular channel. I mean, I get family members that are like, they don't give a shit about the content. They're not gamers, they're not interested in gaming content, they're not interested in Final Fantasy, and they hear about the channel and they give me the whole, oh, what's your channel name? I'm gonna subscribe to your channel, I'll put some videos on now and then I'll earn you some revenue. And it's annoying to try to explain to them, like, no, that doesn't help me, because I mean, you're not interested in the content anyway, which takes away like most of the thing. But even if, let's just say, you're like, okay, fine, you're not interested in the content, but you'll make me some money, so fine, watch the video so I can earn some extra revenue. You've seen that doesn't help. Like, if my grandma puts on like a Final Fantasy video from Dansg08 just because they think they're helping the channel, that video makes me literally anywhere from 1/5 of a cent to about 1/8 of a cent per view. That's why I try to explain to them, like, honestly, you are not going to affect my bottom line even in the slightest. So if that's the reason why you're doing it and not because you're interested in the content, then please don't waste your time with this, because it doesn't help you and it doesn't help me. So that's the kind of thing that, like, there's just so much, like, because the platform is so new and it's so little known how these revenue streams work. That's what I wanted to share with you guys. I hope it's been eye-opening. Once again, I want to conclude, just to really hammer this home, that everyone that watches the content and that genuinely enjoys the content, you guys are the most valuable asset that we have, and you guys are the reason that we're able to do what we do. I have been making videos for so long, since 2008 now. I've made over 3,500, probably pushing 4,000 of them now, and I've only been doing this thing full time and become more reliant on the income I make from YouTube to sustain my life and to pay my bills and to try and be financially independent for maybe like the last 2 or 3 years of it. So a lot of YouTubers in my position, we've all done this thing for free for so long. We've done this thing for pocket change for so long, and we'll continue to do this thing even if it's not our full-time job for so long. That's always the sort of common factor. As long as there's people that's enjoying what we do, we're always going to continue to make content. But of course, the reality of life is that we can only dedicate as much time as we are able to make our content. And if it ever becomes a case that the viewership alone is not enough to sustain what you're doing, and you know, there's not enough Patreon, there's not enough donations, there's not enough this, that, the other, and you're not making enough money to pay your bills and to, if you have a family, to look after your family, it's obviously a no-brainer that YouTube has to take a back seat. So maybe instead of making 500 videos a year, if you end up having to do a full-time job that isn't YouTube to feed your family and to pay your bills and to basically live your life, then maybe you're only going to make 50 videos a year. You're going to do like 1 LP series a year or 2 LP series a year instead of 5. And that means that we'll still do what we're going to do, and you guys will still have content to watch most likely, because we are genuinely passionate about what we do. And I think I speak for pretty much all content creators when I say this. But that doesn't mean that we can always just be this sort of, you know, sunshine and rainbows. We always do it for the love. We never care about the revenue. The views don't matter. You guys have seen that YouTube demands a very high number of views for you to sustain yourself just through your views alone. You need to be making like that 1 million views a month to be financially comfortable in like a, you know, expensive Western nation. It could be like the US, it could be Germany, UK, France, Italy, Switzerland, those kind of places. Of course, if you're lucky enough to live in a nation where living costs are very cheap, and you make English kind of viewing content, and you get the 1 million views a month, then you live like a king. So if you're living, for example, when I lived in Turkey, even though I had like my own place, I had rent, I was obviously living independently on my own, I was able to be financially very comfortable because, of course, the living costs are so low. So you make the same amount of money, but that money goes a very long way in some places. And I did enjoy that for a good, I think, 4 years, 4.5 years, something like that. But because of personal reasons and because Istanbul just wasn't the place I wanted to be, I couldn't purely be here for the reason that it's somewhere cheap to live. And I wanted to push myself to do better, to continue to grow the channel, to make good content that gets even more views, to find smarter ways to increase channel revenue, and all of these kind of things. And so once I did move back to London more permanently, my financial demands became much stronger, and so I've had to think more about revenue and how to continue to generate it, and how to do it in a way that aligns with what I still love to do and the principles that I have for the channel and for my content. So that is it, guys. That is what I wanted to share with you, the raw information using real numbers from my channel about how these things work, and just giving you guys a breakdown of views versus donations versus subscriptions and all of those kind of things and how they affect the channel. So I hope you learned something new today from all of this information, and you get to see how content creators of my kind of level are able to do what we do and to make a living on the platform. So thank you to everybody that's taken the time to watch this. I really do appreciate it. Thank you everyone for your support as well. Thank you for watching. I'll see you soon. Take care.